So, tell me, Mr. Bennis, would you like to come with me and explore the deepest recesses of your mind?
Well, Doctor, if you think that's the best thing for me, then I guess we should.
Oh, but I do, Mr. Bennis. So I would like you to tell me, how does this picture make you feel?
To be honest with you, not great. It makes me feel alone. It makes me feel trapped.
Trapped?
You know, I had a dream once where I was trapped in a snow globe.
Snow globe.
I couldn't break free. I kept hitting the glass harder and harder, but it just wouldn't break. And I was stuck there forever.
Sounds most unpleasant.
It was horrible.
In that case, I am afraid I have some bad news for you, Mr. Bennis. You are still in that dream.
You gotta be kidding me!
Dixit is a party game that has been described by D6 Mafia member Kevin as what happens when Cards Against Humanity meets a Rorschach test. And in many ways, that's a pretty good interpretation. We're going to talk about why. So this game is all about the cards. The cards have a bunch of interesting pictures on them. Pictures that are usually surreal or absurdist. Some of them are almost normal, but they're all pretty weird. And the object of the game is to interpret these pictures in your own unique way and hope that at least one other person in the game will interpret your picture the same way you do. So let's get into it. Each player is going to draw a hand of cards. In our example, we're going to say there are 6 players, so we have hands of 6 cards. And I'm going to go over what cards I have in my hand, just so you kind of know what the pictures look like. So the first one looks like a guy walking in a field, maybe throwing some seeds on the ground, and looks like Venus flytraps maybe growing in behind him. Next looks like a person maybe made of leaves, autumn leaves, or maybe covered in leaves, walking with a cane through some hills, and might be sunset. Next we have a candle burning through a rope, and that might be blood or maybe just red wax dripping out of the top. Here we have a flower growing out of a crack, and it appears to be pulling out its own petals. Here's a really interesting one. It looks like a little boy, or maybe it's a hobo. He's got a little hobo pack, walking through some hills, and he's blowing bubbles that are turning into planets and other sort of heavenly bodies. And then last we have a cat looking into a crystal ball, maybe divining, or maybe he's about to pounce on an unsuspecting fish in a fish bowl. So all the other cards are similar to that. They show little scenes that might invoke emotions, kind of make you think, and there might be different ways to interpret what's going on or what might be important in the scene. So all the players have their hands here of 6 cards, and then you're going to pick an active player. Now that active player is going to go through their hand, and they're going to choose one of these cards. And they're going to give the other players a clue or an interpretation of that card. And it can come in just about any form. It could be a word, it could be a phrase, you could use a song lyric or a poem. The game even says you can use a sound if a sound is how you interpret one of these cards. So I've picked my card, place it face down on the table, and I'm going to say trapped. Trapped is my clue. So now it is up to the other players to go through their hands and try to pick the card that they feel best represents my clue. Now it's important for them to try to get as close as they can to my clue, just as it is important for me to not be too obvious, but be obvious enough that someone else could possibly interpret my picture. So all the other players are going to pick their cards, and then they're going to be secretly all put together and shuffled randomly. Then they're going to be placed here next to the board. Now the game is really all about the cards. It's not so much about the board, but the board is great help in keeping things organized and helping with voting, as well as keeping track of points and reminding you of how scoring works. So we're going to go over the cards that were picked. So first we have, this is interesting. Looks like maybe raindrops or some kind of like capsules hanging. They've got a bunch of different things sort of, trapped in them. Ooh. Next we have a couple of people in a bird cage, trapped in a bird cage, if you will, and they're being watched by a cat at night. Here is a woman with a dress that is a cage, and there are fish inside the cage. Next we have, looks like a wizard. He's inside of a giant light bulb and he's holding a candle. Next we have looks like a young boy inside of a snow globe, but it is snowing outside of the snow globe. And then last, we have a cat looking at a fish inside of a crystal ball. So now that all the cards are placed out, players are going to vote secretly on which one they think might be the active player's card. And they're going to use these little convenient numbered tokens to represent their vote, and they're going to put those out secretly. So we've got a series of votes here. Now, obviously, the active player is not going to vote because they know which one is theirs. So let's see how the voting came out. Well, it looks like we have a vote for 5, a vote for 1, a vote for 2, a vote for 6, and another vote for 2. So after all the voting is done and been revealed, then the active player reveals which card was theirs. In this case, it is the fish looking at the fish inside the crystal ball being watched by the cat. So in this example, the scoring will be as follows. The active player will get 3 points because somebody, at least one person, but not everybody, picked their card. So me as the blue active player, I'm going to move 1, 2, 3 forward there with my cute little rabbit token. Go figure. Next, the player or players who voted for the active player's card, guessed correctly, would also move forward 3. In this case, it is the yellow player. So 1, 2, 3 for the yellow player. Now, none of the other players get any points in this particular example because they did not guess correctly. However, the yellow player might be eligible for some bonus points since that player guessed correctly. So, for example, if they guessed either of these 2 cards with 1 vote, they would move forward 1 extra space. Or if this one with the number 2 with the cat and the 2 people in the bird cage with 2 votes was their card, then they would move forward 2 spaces. The other sort of possibilities for scoring, so say, for example, no one voted for the active one, say yellow was over here somewhere, then the active player would gain no points because their clue was too obscure, no one could figure it out, they don't get any points, and everyone else gets 2 points. The other option is all the players voted for the active player. The clue they gave was too obvious, or no other players had cards that really matched the clue. Everyone picked it right away, voted for it. In that case, the active player would also get 0 points, and all the other players would gain 2 points. So gameplay continues until either one of the players reaches 30 points or the entire deck of cards is drawn through. So that is basically the entire game in a nutshell. After the active player finishes, the board is cleaned up, and then the player on the left becomes the new active player and everyone draws back up to the maximum hand size, and a new card is interpreted and played by the new active player. So what do we think about it? Well, we think that this is our favorite party game. And by party game, I mean a game that's great to break out when you're not surrounded by your normal gaming group, when you have people over for a get-together, people who are not big gamers. This is a perfect game. It's a great icebreaker. You know, somebody's got their younger brother in town visiting. Have them join the game. It's great to learn things about your friends you didn't know. The way they would interpret something might be totally different than how you would interpret the same picture. Learn new things about yourself. Like you see something that, I would have never thought that about this card, but it just sort of came out when I saw it this time. It's definitely not a game for the hardcore gamers. It is simple. It makes you think in a different way than you would normally think. It's not about doing math and guessing how many units your opponent can build and move them to the front lines before you can build them. It's not about hard strategy thinking. It's about outthinking your opponents by finding that middle ground between an obvious clue and a really obscure clue, and getting at least one person to interpret that that picture the same way you interpreted it. So really the only drawback that we've found for this game is the size of the deck. Now I know the game does end when the deck runs out, but it is run out in every game that I've played in. We've played quite a few, and we always go through the whole deck. So after playing this game, 5 or 6 times, you sort of feel like you've seen all the cards. Now, usually there's 1 or 2 cards every game that have come out that you've never seen before, because they've always been stuck in somebody's hand. Nobody's ever chosen them to be interpreted or chosen them as, a possibility to match up with the active player's card. So you do see some new ones, but after a while you really have seen pretty much all the cards. So that being said, there is an expansion available for this game, and we do highly recommend you pick that up just to add more cards to the game, more pictures, just to keep it more interesting, and you might actually get to 30 points in a game. Wouldn't that be nice? Really, we can't recommend this game enough if you're looking for a new party game. I believe the expansion bumps up the number of players, but currently the max is 6. But that's not so bad for a little get-together and just something different. It just sort of breaks the mold of the normal party game, and we highly recommend it. Oh, I'm Russell D. Jones with D6 Mafia. Thanks for watching.